Welcome to Philosophy. Here we explore why we act the way we do, why we choose certain things and not others, why we like some people and not others. I am your host, Dr. D. I am trained as a scientist, and I've also been deeply interested in philosophy for quite some time. Today, we will be talking about choice. What is choice? How does it work? In our basic behavioral algorithm video, we argued that choice is based on maximizing satisfaction. In other words, we suggested that we always choose the action that we predict will satisfy us the most. In this video, we want to show how this idea works mathematically. We also want to compare this mathematical framework of choice to the one we used for desires and identify what the most fundamental layer of our decision-making process really is. In our video on satisfaction, we defined satisfaction in terms of our desire strengths. But after introducing that definition, I began thinking whether satisfaction can truly be defined only in terms of desires. We can certainly say that a desire, once fulfilled, will satisfy us by a certain amount. But we can apply the same logic to actions. Consider the question, how much satisfaction will I get if I do this? This leads directly to the concept of choice. If we expect one action to bring us a certain amount of satisfaction, and another action to bring us more, we will choose the second action. Notice the parallel with satisfaction from desires. The structure is the same, but now the variables are actions instead of desires. We therefore propose defining satisfaction from actions in the same way we defined satisfaction from desires, as a weighted sum of actions with their respective expected subjective valences. Valence simply means how good or bad something feels. To represent actions mathematically, we assign a value of +1 to a performed action and -1 to a non-performed action. A performed action contributes its full expected subjective valence, while a non-performed action contributes the negative of that valence. Let's consider a compound action as an example. A natural one is deciding how much we are willing to pay in order to get something. Suppose we want an ice cream, but we also have to pay for it. This is a compound action because it consists of two components, getting and paying. We cannot perform one without the other. They come as a pair. To illustrate this example, we draw the coordinate system with two dimensions, one for getting and one for paying, as follows. Since each component can only be done or not done, we have four possible action patterns: get and pay, get and not pay, not get and pay, and not get and not pay. Numerically, these correspond to the vectors 1, 1, 1, -1, -1, 1, and -1, -1. We represent these as four vectors like this. Now, suppose we expect that paying for the ice cream will feel pretty bad, while getting the ice cream will feel somewhat good. Let's express these expected subjective valences as plus 0.5 for getting, -1 for paying. We put this vector in our coordinate system as well. To compute the total satisfaction from each compound action, we take the weighted sum of the action vector with these subjective valences. Satisfaction from getting and paying, 1 times 0.5 plus 1 times -1 equals -0.5. Satisfaction from getting and not paying, 1 times 0.5 plus -1 times -1 equals 1.5. Satisfaction from not getting and paying, -1 times 0.5 plus 1 times -1 equals -1.5. Satisfaction from not getting and not paying, -1 times 0.5 plus -1 times -1 equals 0.5. The action pattern that yields the highest satisfaction is getting and not paying. This makes sense. It aligns best with our expected subjective valences of plus 0.5 for getting and -1 for paying. But getting something without paying for it is stealing, so let's assume that option is not available. The next best action is not getting and not paying. This also makes sense. We expect that avoiding the negative valence of paying is more important than gaining the small positive valence of getting the ice cream. In our video on desires, we discovered that maximizing satisfaction requires the desire vector to align with our expected subjective valences. This follows directly from a well-known mathematical result. To maximize the inner product between two vectors, they must point in the same direction. But actions cannot align in this way because each action component can only be +1 or -1, performed or not performed. Even so, we can still choose the action pattern from the options available to us that yields the highest satisfaction. That is exactly what we did in the example above. Notice that both kinds of satisfaction, satisfaction from desires and satisfaction from actions, use the same operation, a weighted sum of desire strengths or action choices with the expected subjective valences. In the first case, we ask, how well will fulfilling these desires make me feel? In the second, we ask, how well will performing these actions make me feel? To maximize satisfaction from desires, the desire vector must align with our expected subjective valences. And to maximize satisfaction from actions, we must choose the action pattern that aligns most closely with those same subjective valences. This reveals something important. Desires are not the fundamental layer of our decision-making process. Expected subjective valences are. They form the underlying structure that both desires and actions respond to. Everything is weighted against how we predict things will make us feel. If we expect eating to make us feel really good and sleeping only a little, our desire to eat will be strong and our desire to sleep will be weak. If we expect getting ice cream to feel only mildly good, but paying for it to feel bad, we will choose not to get the ice cream and not to pay. That action simply aligns best with our expected subjective valences. We can now see the full structure of how choice works. Both desires and actions are evaluated using the same mechanism, a weighted sum with our expected subjective valences. Desires use this structure to orient themselves toward what we predict will feel good, and actions use the same structure to determine what we should actually do. But underneath both of these layers lies something deeper. The most fundamental element of the system is not our desires or our actions, but the expected subjective valences themselves, our internal predictions of how good or bad each possible outcome will feel. These predicted valences shape everything. They determine what we want, and they determine what we choose. They explain why desires can be strong or weak, and why certain actions feel compelling while others feel unthinkable. They also explain why our behavior can sometimes be misguided. If our predicted valences are inaccurate, both our desires and our choices will follow those inaccuracies. This gives us a unified picture of satisfaction and choice. At the foundation of the system lies a set of expected subjective valences, our internal estimates of how good or bad each possible outcome will feel. Desires align with these valences, and actions are selected to maximize total satisfaction with respect to them. All of our wanting and doing is shaped by the same underlying structure. In this sense, expected subjective valences are the core of the entire behavioral system, the layer from which both desire and choice emerge. Choice is nothing more than the pursuit of maximum satisfaction by aligning our actions as closely as possible with our expected subjective valences. At the foundation of every desire and every choice lies the same thing, our expected subjective valences. This concludes our video. I am Dr. D, bidding you farewell until the next one.